Hello everyone. Today I want to share a story that will make you look at your own skin differently. It is a story about how fragile life really is. We often worry about car accidents, or heart attacks, or shooters. But sometimes, the killer is so small. You can't even see it without a microscope. It enters your body through a door that you left open, a door as small as a pinprick. And once it is inside, it moves faster than a wildfire. This is the story of Mark and Sarah, a couple living in the suburbs of Atlanta. Mark was 45 years old, a strong man, a former high school football player. He rarely got sick. He was the kind of guy who would refuse to go to the doctor unless his arm was falling off. "You know the type. I'll walk it off," he would say. "It's just a flesh wound." That attitude, that strength, would eventually become his greatest weakness. It was a beautiful Sunday in May. Mother's Day was approaching, and Mark wanted to surprise Sarah by cleaning up her rose garden. Sarah loved her roses, but they had become overgrown and wild. Mark put on his old baseball cap, grabbed his clippers, and went to work. He didn't wear gloves. He said he liked to feel the earth in his hands. He spent hours pruning, cutting, and pulling weeds. Around noon, while he was wrestling with a particularly stubborn bush, he felt a sharp sting on his right forearm. Ouch! Mark pulled his arm back. A long, jagged thorn had scratched him. It wasn't a deep cut. Just a surface scratch, about 2 inches long. A few drops of blood beaded up on his skin. Mark wiped the blood off on his jeans. He didn't think twice about it. He didn't go inside to wash it. He didn't put antibiotic ointment on it. He just kept working. Dirt, fertilizer, and bacteria from the soil mixed with the open wound. But to Mark, it was nothing. That evening, Mark and Sarah had a barbecue. Mark was in good spirits. He grilled steaks, drank a beer, and laughed with the neighbors. The scratch on his arm was slightly red, but it didn't look angry. It just looked like a scratch. But around 9 p.m., things started to change. Mark was sitting on the couch watching TV when he suddenly shivered. "Is the AC on too high?" he asked Sarah. "It's freezing in here." Sarah looked at the thermostat. "It's 72 degrees, Mark. It's perfect." Mark pulled a blanket over himself. His teeth started to chatter. Click, click, click. "I must be coming down with something," he muttered. "Maybe the flu. The guys at the office were coughing all week." He took 2 ibuprofen and went to bed early. Sarah wasn't too worried. It was just a chill. Mark never got sick, so if he said he was sick, he would probably sleep it off and be fine in the morning. She went to sleep beside him, listening to his rhythmic breathing. But in the middle of the night, Sarah woke up. Mark was thrashing in the bed. He was soaked in sweat. The sheets were damp, but when Sarah touched him, he was burning up. He was radiating heat like a furnace. "Mark?" she whispered. "Mark, are you okay?" Mark mumbled something incoherent. "The roses. Get the dog out. The blue car." He was speaking nonsense. He was delirious. Sarah turned on the lamp. "Mark, wake up." Mark opened his eyes, but they weren't Mark's eyes. They were glassy, wild, and unfocused. He looked at Sarah like she was a stranger. "Who are you?" he rasped. "Where am I?" Panic seized Sarah's chest. This was not the flu. She pulled the blanket off him to see if he was injured. And that was when she saw it. His right arm, the arm with the scratch. It wasn't just a scratch anymore. The area around the thorn cut was angry, swollen, and hot to the touch. But what terrified Sarah was not the cut itself. It was the line. A bright, angry red streak was traveling up from the cut, snake-like, winding its way up his forearm, past his elbow, and disappearing into the sleeve of his t-shirt towards his armpit. It looked like someone had drawn on him with a red marker. But it was under the skin. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. She remembered reading something about this online years ago. A red line tracking up a vein. Blood poisoning. Sepsis. The bacteria from the garden had entered his bloodstream. It was marching towards his heart. And it was moving fast. "Mark, we have to go to the hospital. Now," Sarah screamed. She tried to pull him up, but Mark was dead weight. He was a big man, 200 pounds. And he was weak as a kitten. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. He collapsed onto the floor, taking the nightstand lamp down with him. Crash. He lay there, shaking violently, gasping for air. "I can't breathe," he choked out. Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped it. 911. "What is your emergency?" "My husband," Sarah cried. "He has a high fever, he is confused, and there is a red line on his arm. Please hurry. I think he is dying." The operator's voice changed instantly. It became sharp and urgent. "Ma'am, listen to me. Is he breathing? Is he pale? He is gasping. His lips are turning blue." "Okay, the paramedics are on their way. Unlock the front door. Stay with him." Sarah sat on the floor, holding Mark's head in her lap. The red line seemed to be growing before her eyes, extending inch by inch towards his chest. Mark's eyes rolled back in his head. The strong man, the protector, was fading away. Was it too late? Had the poison already reached his vital organs? And what exactly is happening inside a body when sepsis takes over? The battle for Mark's life was just beginning, and the enemy was already winning. The silence of the house was shattered by the wail of sirens. Blue and red lights flashed against the living room window, creating a chaotic strobe effect on the walls. The paramedics burst through the front door. They didn't walk, they ran. Sarah was still on the floor, clutching Mark's hand. "Over here," she screamed. "Please help him." A paramedic named Mike knelt beside Mark. He took one look at Mark's pale, clammy skin and the blue tint on his lips. He put a finger on Mark's neck to check his pulse. "Pulse is thready, and very fast," Mike shouted to his partner. "About 140. Then, he saw the arm. He grabbed a pair of scissors and cut Mark's t-shirt sleeve all the way up to the shoulder. The red line had traveled past the armpit. It was heading towards the chest. Towards the heart. "We have a confirmed source of infection," Mike said tightly. "Right arm. Lymphangitis streaking. Possible necrotizing fasciitis or severe cellulitis. We are looking at sepsis. Maybe septic shock." "Septic shock?" Sarah repeated, her voice trembling. Is that bad?" Mike didn't answer her directly. He looked at his partner. "Load him up. Now. We need to move. Call the Tell them to activate the sepsis protocol. We are coming in hot." They lifted Mark onto the stretcher. He was a big man, but he was limp. He groaned as they moved him, a low, guttural sound that didn't sound human. "Stay with us, Mark," Mike yelled, tapping Mark's cheek. "Open your eyes." Mark's eyelids fluttered, but rolled back. He was checking out. Inside the ambulance, it was a war zone. Mike tried to start an IV line in Mark's left arm. But sepsis does something terrible to the body. It causes the blood vessels to dilate, to widen. This makes the blood pressure drop like a stone. And it makes the veins collapse. "I can't get a vein," Mike cursed. His pressure is tanking. 60/30. He is bottoming out. He had to drill a needle directly into the bone of Mark's shin just to get fluids into him. An intraosseous line. The sound of the drill was sickening, but Mark didn't even flinch. That was how far gone he was. They arrived at the hospital. The trauma team was waiting. They didn't stop at the front desk. They wheeled Mark straight into the resuscitation room. Doctors and nurses swarmed him like bees. BP is 50/20. We are losing him, a nurse shouted. Start 2 liters of saline. Wide open. Get the norepinephrine ready. We need to clamp those vessels down. Draw blood cultures. Lactate level. White count. Sarah stood in the corner of the room, pressed against the wall. She felt small, useless. She watched them stick tubes and needles into the man she loved. Just yesterday, he was grilling steaks. He was laughing. And now, a machine was beeping an alarm that sounded like a countdown. Dr. Miller, the attending physician, stepped away from the bed for a second to talk to Sarah. He looked serious, grim. Mrs. Johnson, he said rapidly, your husband is in septic shock. Do you know what that is? Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Is it blood poisoning? It is more than that. Dr. Miller explained. Bacteria from the garden entered his bloodstream through that scratch. Likely staph or strep. But the bacteria isn't the only thing killing him. It is his own body. He took a breath and continued. His immune system has reacted to the infection by releasing a massive amount of chemicals called cytokines. We call it a cytokine storm. Instead of just attacking the bacteria, these chemicals are attacking his own blood vessels. They are making his vessels leak. Fluid is leaking out of his blood and into his tissues. That is why his blood pressure is so low. His organs, his kidneys, his liver, his brain, are starving. They aren't getting any oxygen. If we don't get his pressure up in the next 30 minutes, his organs will shut down permanently. And he will die. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the stomach. But, it was just a scratch. She whispered, a tiny scratch. That is all it takes. Dr. Miller said, sepsis doesn't discriminate. It moves fast. We are doing everything we can. We are pumping him full of heavy-duty antibiotics, vancomycin and Zosyn, and we are giving him medication to tighten his blood vessels. Suddenly, the alarms on the monitor changed tone. It was a flat, continuous tone. Doctor, he is coding. No pulse. Sarah screamed. Dr. Miller spun around and ran back to the bed. Start compressions. Get the crash cart. Sarah watched in horror as a nurse climbed onto a step stool and began pushing down on Mark's chest with all her might. Crack, crack, the sound of ribs breaking. Charged to 200. Clear. Thump. Mark's body arched off the table. Did the heart start again? Was this the end of the line for the Sunday gardener? And even if they bring him back, has the lack of oxygen already destroyed his brain? The battle for Mark's heart was happening right now. But the war against the bacteria raging in his blood was far from over. What happens when the antibiotics don't work fast enough? And what is the black extremity complication that happens when you use too much medication to save the heart? Join me in part 3, as Mark fights for his life in the ICU, and Sarah faces a decision no wife should ever have to make. We got a pulse. Sinus tachycardia. Rate is 130. The shout from the nurse was the sweetest sound Sarah had ever heard. Mark came back. His heart, battered and tired, decided to beat again. But the victory was short-lived. He was alive, but he was hanging by a thread. They rushed him to the surgical intensive care unit, the ICU. This is the place where the sickest of the sick go. The place where machines do the work of the body. Sarah was allowed to see him an hour later. When she walked into room 405, she gasped. She put her hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Mark didn't look like Mark anymore. He was swollen, unrecognizable. Because his blood vessels were leaking fluid, His whole body had puffed up like a balloon. His face was round and tight. His eyes were swollen shut. He had a tube in his throat helping him breathe. The ventilator hissed and clicked rhythmically. Whoosh, click, whoosh. Another tube was in his neck, delivering powerful drugs directly to his heart. A third tube was in his groin, connected to a dialysis machine. His kidneys have shut down. The ICU nurse explained gently. The sepsis hit them hard. This machine is cleaning his blood for him. Sarah walked to the side of the bed. She wanted to hold his hand. She reached out for his left hand, the one that wasn't swollen from the infection. But when she touched his fingers, she pulled back in horror. They were ice cold, and they weren't pink. They were purple, dark, bruised purple, almost black at the tips. Nurse, Sarah cried. His hands, they are turning black. Is he cold? The nurse sighed. It was a sad, resigned sigh. No, honey, he isn't cold, the nurse said softly. It is the medication. Dr. Miller came in to explain. He looked exhausted. Mrs. Johnson, we have to make a choice. A terrible choice. He pointed to the bags of fluid hanging on the IV pole. These drugs, norepinephrine and vasopressin, are keeping him alive. They tighten his blood vessels to keep his blood pressure up. Without them, his heart would stop again instantly. He paused, looking at Mark's darkening fingers. But there is a price. These drugs clamp down on the vessels so hard that they cut off circulation to the extremities. They shunt all the blood to the brain and the heart, to save the vital organs. But that means the fingers and toes, they starve. Sarah looked at the blackening fingertips. So, to save his life, we are sacrificing his hands? She asked, her voice shaking. We are trying to find a balance, Dr. Miller said, but right now, saving his life is the only priority. If we turn down the drugs, he dies. The night dragged on. Sarah sat in the chair, watching the numbers on the monitor. Heart rate, 125. Blood pressure, 85/50. Still too low. The red line on his right arm, the infection site, was fading slightly, thanks to the antibiotics. But the blackness on his fingers and toes was spreading. It was creeping up his hands like a pair of dark gloves. It was necrosis. Gangrene. The tissue was dying. Sarah prayed. She bargained with God. Take his hands if you have to, just don't take him. Please don't take him. The next morning, the lab results came back. Dr. Miller walked in with a thick file. We identified the bacteria, he said. It is group A Streptococcus, the same bacteria that causes strep throat. But this strain is invasive. It was in the soil, and it got into that scratch. Strep? Sarah was confused. People get strep all the time. They don't die from it. Usually, no. Dr. Miller agreed. But Mark's immune system overreacted. And once it entered the blood, it caused disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC. He explained the cruel irony. His blood is clotting and bleeding at the same time. Small clots are forming all over his body, blocking blood flow to his organs and limbs. That is also why his hands are turning black. Day 3 in the ICU. Mark was still in a coma. The doctors had kept him sedated. His blood pressure had finally stabilized. They started to wean him off the powerful drugs. The swelling started to go down. But the damage to his limbs was done. His fingers were now hard, dry, and black as charcoal. The toes on both feet were the same. It looked like frostbite from an expedition to Everest, but he was lying in a hospital bed in Atlanta. On the 4th day, they stopped the sedation. Let's see if he wakes up, Dr. Miller said. We need to check his brain function. Sarah stood by the bed, gripping the bedrail. Mark, can you hear me? She waited. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. Nothing. Had the cardiac arrest taken his mind? Was he just a shell now? Then, a twitch. His eyelids fluttered. He opened his eyes. They weren't wild anymore. They were tired. Confused. But they were Mark's eyes. He tried to speak, but the tube in his throat choked him. He gagged. "Don't try to talk," Sarah cried, tears of relief flooding her face. "You are okay. You are in the hospital." Mark looked around. Panic set in. He tried to lift his hand to touch the tube. He lifted his right arm. But he couldn't feel his fingers. He looked down at his hand. He saw the black, shriveled claws at the end of his arms. His eyes went wide with terror. The monitor started beeping rapidly. Beep, 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 beep. He was hyperventilating. He was looking at his own dead hands. The doctors rushed in to calm him down. They had to sedate him again. Sarah collapsed in the chair. He was alive. His brain was working. But how do you tell a man who works with his hands, a man who loves to garden, that he might never hold a pair of clippers again? How do you tell him that the price of the Sunday scratch was his limbs? And the nightmare wasn't over. The dead tissue was dangerous. It could get infected again. The surgeons came to speak to Sarah. "We have to operate," the lead surgeon said. "The tissue on his hands and feet is dead. It is poisoning him. We have to amputate." Sarah felt the room spin. Amputate? How much? The surgeon looked at the floor, then at Sarah. Both legs below the knee. And all fingers on both hands. Maybe part of the palms. A quadruple amputee. From a rose thorn. How will Mark accept this? Will he want to live like this? And as they prepared for the surgery, a new complication arose. The bacteria had seeded in one more place. A place they didn't check. His heart valve. Endocarditis. Could Mark survive a major amputation and open heart surgery? Join me in part 4, as Mark faces the brutal reality of his new life, and the surgery that would decide his future. The decision was made. It wasn't really a decision. It was an ultimatum given by death itself. Mark was awake, alert enough to understand. Dr. Miller stood by the bed. Sarah held Mark's forearm, avoiding the black, dead fingers. "Mark," Dr. Miller said softly, "the tissue is necrotic. It is dead. If we leave it attached, the toxins will flood your heart again. We have to amputate." Mark looked at his hands. They were hard, shriveled, like mummy's hands. He tried to wiggle his thumb. He couldn't see it move, but his brain sent the signal. He looked at Sarah. His eyes were pleading. "Save them. Please save them," Sarah cried, shaking her head. "I am sorry, baby. I am so sorry. We have to do it. I need you here. I don't care about the hands. I need you." Mark closed his eyes. A single tear tracked through the stubble on his cheek. He nodded. Just once. It was the bravest nod Sarah had ever seen. The surgery took 6 hours. 4 surgical teams worked at the same time. It was a gruesome assembly line of survival. While one team worked on his left leg, another worked on his right. While one team worked on his hands, the anesthesiologist monitored his fragile heart. Sarah sat in the waiting room. She stared at the clock on the wall. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every second that passed was a second that a piece of her husband was being taken away. She imagined the rose bush in the garden. That stupid, overgrown rose bush. One thorn, one tiny bacteria, and now, her husband was losing his feet and his hands. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a cruel joke. When Mark woke up in the recovery room, the first thing he felt was pain. Searing, burning pain. "My hands," he groaned, his voice raspy from the breathing tube that had just been removed. "My hands are on fire. Help me." The nurse rushed over. "Mr. Johnson, try to relax." "My hands," Mark screamed. "They are burning. Put them in water." He tried to lift them. He lifted his arms, but there were no hands. There were just thick, white bandages, rounded off at the wrists. He looked down, where his feet should be. The blanket was flat. The bandages stopped at the mid-calf. He was experiencing phantom limb pain. His brain still had a map of his hands and feet. The nerves were still firing signals, screaming that they were being crushed, burned, twisted. But there was nothing there to soothe, nothing to rub. It is a torture that only amputees understand. The pain of a ghost. The days that followed were dark. Darker than the sepsis. Mark fell into a deep depression. He refused to look at his stumps. He refused to look at Sarah. He stared at the ceiling for hours. He was 45 years old. He was a man who fixed cars. A man who built decks. A man who mowed his own lawn. Now, he couldn't even scratch his own nose. He couldn't hold a fork. He couldn't walk to the bathroom. He was trapped in his own body. One afternoon, a nurse came in to feed him lunch. It was mashed potatoes and gravy. "Here comes the airplane," the nurse said cheerfully, trying to lighten the mood. It was meant to be kind, but to Mark, it felt like an insult. He wasn't a baby. He was a grown man. He turned his head away. The spoon smeared gravy on his cheek. "Get out," Mark growled. "Mr. Johnson, you need to eat." "I said get out," Mark shouted, his face turning red. "Leave me alone. Just let me die. You should have let me die on the table." The nurse left. Flustered, Sarah walked in. She had heard everything. She grabbed a wet cloth and gently wiped the gravy from his face. Mark pulled away. Don't touch me. Look at me, Sarah. Look at this." He raised his bandaged stumps. "I am a monster. I am half a man. How are you going to live with this? You are going to be my nurse forever? Wiping my butt? Feeding me? I love you, Mark," Sarah said firmly. "Love isn't enough." Mark sobbed. He broke down completely. "I can't do this. I don't want to be here." Sarah didn't know what to do. She felt like she was drowning too. She left the hospital room and drove home. She walked into the backyard. The sun was setting. There it was, the rose bush. It was still there, green, lush, mocking her. The jagged branch where Mark had cut himself was still visible. Sarah felt a rage boil up inside her. A hot, white rage. She went to the garage. She grabbed a shovel. She didn't put on gloves. She didn't care. She marched to the rose bush. She started digging. She hacked at the roots. She stomped on the branches. She screamed as she tore the plant out of the ground. She dragged the thorny mess to the fire pit. She doused it in lighter fluid. Whoosh! She watched it burn. She watched the thorns turn to ash. "You didn't win," she whispered to the fire. "You took his hands, but you didn't take him. You didn't win." She went back to the hospital the next day with a new energy. She brought a video. She walked into Mark's room. He was still staring at the wall. "Mark, look at this," she said. She held up her phone. It was a video of a man, a quadruple amputee, just like Mark. The man was attaching prosthetic hooks to his arms. He was smiling. And then, the man got into a car and drove. Mark watched. He didn't say anything. "He is driving, Mark," Sarah said. "And look at this one." She swiped. The man was holding a fork with a special cuff. He was eating a steak. "You are not half a man," Sarah said, her voice shaking but strong. "You are just a man who has to learn a new way to do things. And I am going to be right there with you. We are going to figure this out. But you have to fight. You fought the bacteria. Now you have to fight the despair." Mark looked at the phone. Then he looked at Sarah. He looked at the woman who had burned the rose bush for him. He took a deep breath. It hurts. Sarah, he whispered. The ghost hands. They hurt so much. I know, Sarah said, kissing his forehead. We will get through the pain. But first, you need to eat. She picked up the spoon. Mark looked at it. He hesitated. Then, he opened his mouth. It was just a spoonful of mashed potatoes. But it was the first step of a marathon. Mark had survived the red line. He had survived the surgery. Now came the hardest part, rehab. Learning to walk on metal legs. Learning to pick up a cup with plastic hooks. And facing the world, the stares, the whispers. But Mark had a message he wanted to share. A warning. Because he knew, somewhere out there, another gardener was reaching for a tool, ignoring a scratch. What is Mark's final message to the world? And what does he look like today? Join me in the final chapter, Part 5, for the conclusion of Mark's journey and the sepsis survival guide. Welcome back to the final chapter of Mark's journey. It has been 1 year since the Sunday barbecue. 1 year since the rose-thorn scratch. If you walked into the rehabilitation center in downtown Atlanta today, you would hear a rhythmic sound. Clack, whir, clack, whir. It is the sound of titanium joints moving. Mark is walking. He is wearing 2 prosthetic legs below the knee. They are carbon fiber, black and sleek. He is holding onto the parallel bars with his new arms. They aren't hands of flesh and bone anymore. They are myoelectric hooks. When Mark flexes his bicep, the hook opens. When he relaxes, it closes. It took him months of sweating, falling, and cursing to master them. But today, he is standing 6 feet tall again. He walks to the end of the bars. He turns around. Sarah is standing there. She is smiling. You did it, she says. Mark looks at her. He lifts his right arm, the arm that once had the red line of death, and uses the metal hook to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. I did it, he says, his voice thick with emotion. We did it. Mark is a survivor. He is part of the Sepsis Alliance now. He travels to local high schools and community centers. He rolls up his sleeves and shows his prosthetics. The room always goes silent. The kids stop looking at their phones. I lost my hands and feet because of a gardening accident. He tells them, I ignored a cut. I thought I was too tough for a band-aid. Don't be tough. Be smart. Mark and Sarah have a mission now. They want to save you from the nightmare they lived through. Sepsis kills 270,000 Americans every year. That is 1 person every 2 minutes. Most of them die because they waited too long. Because they thought it was just the flu. So, please, take a pen and paper. Write this down. This is Mark's survival guide to keep you safe from the red line. First, the golden rule of wounds. It doesn't matter if it is a rose thorn, a paper cut, a cat scratch, or a blister from new shoes. Treat every break in the skin like a potential entry door for a killer. Wash it immediately with soap and warm water. Not just a quick rinse. Scrub it, apply antibiotic ointment, and cover it with a sterile bandage. If you work in the garden, wear gloves. Thick leather gloves. If you have diabetes, check your feet every night. A tiny sore on your toe can turn into an amputation in a week. Second, watch for the red line. This is what saved Mark's life initially, even though he was late. If you see a red streak starting from a wound and tracking up your arm or leg towards your body, that is lymphangitis. It means the infection is traveling in the express lane to your heart. Do not wait until morning. Do not call your primary care doctor for an appointment next week. Go to the emergency room immediately. Draw a circle around the redness with a pen so you can track if it grows. Third, the TIME acronym. Sepsis is sneaky. You might not always see a red line. Sometimes the infection is internal, like a urinary tract infection or pneumonia. So, remember the word TIME if you have an infection, and you develop these signs. Call 911. T. Temperature. Is it higher or lower than normal? Sepsis can cause a high fever, but it can also cause a dangerously low body temperature causing violent shivering. I. Infection. Do you have a known infection? A cut? A bug bite? A UTI? Or did you just have surgery? M. Mental decline. This is the big one. Is the person confused? Are they slurring their words? Are they sleepy and hard to wake up? Mark didn't know his own wife. That was the brain starving for oxygen. E. Extremely ill. Survivors often say they felt like they were going to die. It is a feeling of impending doom. Severe pain, shortness of breath, clammy skin. And finally, the magic words. If you go to the ER, don't just say, "I feel sick." Look the doctor in the eye and say, "I am concerned about sepsis." Those words trigger a protocol. They will check your lactate levels. They will start fluids. They will look closer. Mark didn't know the word sepsis until it was too late. Now, you do. Mark is back home now. The rose bush is gone. In its place, Sarah planted a strong oak tree. Mark sits on the porch sometimes, looking at his metal legs. He misses his fingers. He misses the feeling of the soil. But then he looks at Sarah, sitting next to him, reading a book. He takes a deep breath of fresh air. He is alive. He paid a heavy price, but he is still here to tell the tale. Don't let a small scratch be the end of your story. Clean your wounds, watch for the signs, and speak up. Thank you for listening to Mark's journey. Please share this story. Sepsis is a medical emergency. Spread the word, and stay safe. Goodbye for now.